Well, I was wrong. It turns out when my plate is very full, I can get pretty distracted. So today, I'm going to be real honest with myself where I'm at, and my intention is hopefully it helps you too. Today, we're talking all things productivity when you are in a hustle season. I have had to learn to trick myself into getting the right stuff done. On this podcast, we talk a lot about getting shit done, which is great. But I almost want to add like an edit to that concept because it's about getting the right shit done. And there is a lot going on right now. That's just the reality of my life and my business. This is self-inflicted. I love all the stuff I'm doing. I've shared that before, but I think it's worth a revisit. So today we're going to revisit that. I want to talk about productivity. I have 3 tips that I myself have used very recently to get over this hump, if you will. And we're going to practice some radical honesty today. So let's jump on in to the episode. Here's the real talk. First things first, for context's sake, let me share all of the current responsibilities I have on my business plate. I have Kelsey Murray Coaching, which is my one-on-one coaching offer. I have a Baja business retreat I'm co-hosting. If you're listening to this episode in real time, it's coming up very quickly. I have the Coug's First podcast that I host. I don't co-host it. I host. I interview different Coug-owned businesses. I also will be doing a special retreat experience soon for that community that I'm collaborating with. I am on the board of directors for the Cougar Collective, which has to do with NIL, name, image, and likeness. I also have Get Shit Done podcast, which you're listening to right now. And I run a group called Empower PNW, which is a women's business networking group. That is all the stuff I have going on top of just trying to be a human, take care of my people, and hang out with my husband from time to time when I have downtime. There's a lot. There's a lot on the plate. When people meet me, they say it's a lot because it is. And like I said, it's hard because I love what I do. All the Coug stuff I do, I have deep passion for the college I went to. I also love helping people grow, which is why I have the networking group. Community is a core value of mine. All the things I do kind of interweave a bit, but that's the reality of my plate right now. And I'm not perfect. There's days where I struggle to get all the things done. If I'm really honest, there's days where it's hard. There's days where I leave my to-do list half done and it weighs on me because I feel kind of like I failed myself. But all in all, I keep moving forward. I get the core things done. And there's a few hacks I've learned along the way to ensure that I'm staying productive on the right stuff. And newsflash, sometimes that means letting stuff go. Sometimes that means asking for help. Sometimes that means saying, I'll get it done tomorrow. So that's the conversation we're going to have today. I wanted to share all cards on the table business-wise, what's going on so you know. And you're honest with me. I'm honest with you about where we're at today. And that's my current season. So one thing I've learned when it comes to productivity is I am a compartmentalization queen. And I have to be that way to stay focused. So I have learned my tendencies, my default mode. If I just like wake up and just like free fall into my day, I'm hyper aware of what works and what doesn't. And what I've learned for me specifically is to set myself up for success via my schedule. That's very important. And I'll share exactly what I do for that. The other very, if not more important piece is sticking to it. And that's hard. That's hard to do. So I've learned a few ways to kind of trick myself into sticking to that. And also sometimes you have to adapt and be able to pivot when that's needed too. So all that to say, let's talk schedule real quick. I share this a lot because I think it's so important. I have days where I focus on my business. I have days where I focus on meeting with people, and I have days or pockets of time where I focus on doing stuff. For me personally, in wearing all of these different hats, and again, don't feel bad for me. I chose this life and I love what I'm doing and my business is thriving. So please don't, this is not a pity party. This is just radical honesty. But I've learned for me, when I need to sit here like I am right now and create content and talk to people, I'd rather just do that over and over and over and over and over again on the same day. Honestly, this is like a silly thing, but this setup of we're talking on my phone. We're hanging out on my phone right now because the camera quality is better. I have notes. I have the mic. I have to at least look somewhat presentable. By the way, I'm wearing sweats. But there's so many factors that go into getting ready to record content that I would rather sit here for a couple hours and record stuff versus every day having to create a thing. So for me, that simple switch of acknowledging, like, I would rather batch a bunch of this. I also interviewed on someone else's podcast before this. I interviewed someone for the Coog podcast before this. I'm in podcast content mode right now. That works so much better for me. And I just have to, I know that about myself. So I have to build my schedule to protect that. And then I have to stick to it. That's that big important piece. So I just wanted to say, from a schedule perspective, if you're listening to this episode and you're taking notes or you're thinking of how do I apply this productivity realness to my life, it's this. Where can you set your schedule up for success based off the things you know about yourself? I know for me, my business involves a lot of meetings, the way it currently is run. I would rather go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting than meeting hour break, meeting half hour break, meeting 15 minutes. I've learned that about myself. So I set my schedule up in a way where I have a bunch of back to back. People see it, they think I'm nuts, but I work better that way. Here's what also is important. At the end of the day, having just a sliver of time where I can dump out my brain, if there's any follow-up that needs to happen, if there's any questions I need to have, clarification, resources I need to send to my people, that's been game-changing for me. And again, setting up that expectation and then safeguarding it as well. But let's dive into a couple tactical things. Schedule-wise, I just wanted to give you a few hacks that have worked for me that are really being tested during this hustle time. But here's the 3 that I have especially found for productivity and getting the right stuff done. Number 1, this is like a small thing, but for me was a big deal, and it's batch responding. And if you have an email out to me or a DM out to me and you're waiting for a response, my answer to you is I treat my DMs and my email like a to-do list, and I'm able to be more present and give you a real authentic Kelsey answer if I just sit and focus on that one task. And right now I'm recording this podcast, so I'll get back to you later. But even just batch responding, I turned off the notifications on my phone. I'm looking for my phone. I'm looking at my phone. That's so funny. I was literally looking at it to reference it. Hi, you're right in front of me. But turning off notifications from Instagram, from email, I don't get any notifications there. I will let that shit pile up. Not for weeks or days on end, ideally, but being okay, allowing yourself to pause for a minute. And as long as there's nothing that majorly needs my attention, which, by the way, you hire the right people, they will tell you if anything needs your attention and they can help with the managing of this stuff. But the amount of DMs I get a day, insane. a lot, which is great. This is something I have always wanted in my business, but I have to be realistic about my capacity and my time. And if I'm responding to a DM, sometimes it means sending someone a link. Sometimes it means sending them someone else's contact information. Sometimes it takes an action step. So I want to be in a place where I'm focused and able to deal with it. I used to be the person, someone DMs, I'm responding right away. I'm driving. I'm on my way to go do someone's hair. I'm like on the toilet. And that just does not set me or you up for success. And then oftentimes things fall through the cracks. So batch responding, game changing. For me, that goes for text, that goes for DMs, emails, phone calls. And especially, this is where it's so hard, but this especially gets tested for me when I am working on my business. As you know, I try to protect my Mondays, or at least half of my Mondays, to be CEO days where I focus on my business. I meet with my team. We go over the week, what we need to focus on, all those things. If I'm responding to texts and DMs while I'm doing that, my brain is switching from focusing on making my business better to answering this question about this thing. It's really hard to bring my brain back to focus mode. So I just put my phone on airplane mode. Real talk, as we're recording this episode, this came up on the end of February. I always mark off the last of the month or the first of the month to audit my business. I do my KPIs. I go over my finances. I disperse my money to my different accounts. I really love that time to get real crystal clear on what's working, what's not working financially, what happened in my business. And my phone was blowing up. Text messages, phone calls, Slack messages, Voxers, Instagram, email, like all of it. I literally had to like put my phone face down on silent mode away from me, log out of my email, and just focus on finishing this thing. Because this one thing, even though in that moment, looking at my finances is not making me money in that moment, having that awareness and being in that practice and discipline of focusing on my stuff long term is going to help my business make more money and me have more clarity and peace and understanding of where things are at. So I had to hyper protect myself working on my business in that moment, and it was hard. But giving myself the permission to do it was so satisfying. So by the time I got all the way through my process, I reconciled my books, I did my KPIs, I moved all the money around, I did my mileage, even like where did I drive and all of that stuff. Once I was done with that, that's when I went through and I batch responded. I always start with client stuff. I then go to team stuff, and then I go to email, and then Instagram's the last place I go. And it was way more efficient that way. So if nothing else, maybe this one hack may change your life. Give yourself permission to batch respond to people. It's okay if they wait a minute. It's okay. You're one human. Number 2, when we're thinking about productivity and focusing on getting stuff done, but the right stuff, number 2 is this: diagnosing the root cause. If you're procrastinating on something, cough, cough, 99% of my clients probably listening right now, you have to get to the bottom of why. And what's coming to mind right now is 2 things. I have clients who have been talking about wanting to come up with a social media strategy, and that just keeps, it's like sand slipping through our fingers. There's a reason why that is not become a priority in our time together or in just how you're running your business. There is a reason. On the other side, facing money stuff. If we're avoiding money stuff, not looking at it, filling out the month-end audit I just talked about, it's not a matter of I don't have time, I got too busy. There's a reason we're avoiding it. And I think this kind of falls into 3 different buckets. So I want to dive a little deeper into this for you. Why are you avoiding this thing? Number 1, it could be because of this. It could be that you don't have a clear plan on how to tackle the thing. This podcast is an example of that. I recently, now it's been a couple months, but I recently changed my podcasting team. It was a hard decision, but just for where I'm at in business and the goals of trajectory of where I want to go, I feel confident in this decision. And because of that, I was really looking forward to strategizing topics and content and launch strategy with this new person. Due to just schedules and life and stuff, it took this conversation that needed to happen to help me feel confident in where we're going on this crazy ride that is Get Shit Done podcast. It took longer. So for me, I kept putting off planning podcast episodes and even recording more than I ever have. I was like in real time, edit, publish, in real time, edit. And I normally don't roll that way. You guys know, but I kept putting it off. I had to be really honest and diagnose the root problem. It's because I didn't have confidence and clarity of where we were headed and why from a podcast strategy standpoint. Then we had a call, and all of a sudden the entire year is planned. To the topic, to the guest, everything planned, done. And I feel so good. I feel like settled. And maybe that's why today's schedule worked out the way it did, where all I'm doing is podcast stuff. It's because I planned. So having that clear plan is all I needed. I needed to know where we're headed and why. And then from there, I was able to plug in the people where I want them to and the topics I wanted to. And I feel really good about where we're headed. And the crazy thing is, this all was a Kelsey issue. This was not my editor issue. I just respect her opinion and wanted to run it by her. But once we talked it through and I feel good about where we landed, boom, action happened, and the right action. So if you're listening to this and you're procrastinating something, get to the root cause. And part of it, maybe you just need to sit and create a plan to tackle it. Another subcategory of this could be you don't have time or space to feel creative. And this, for me, I now, full transparency, have somebody who does all of my social media content. God bless, because it makes my life a lot easier. Whoa. But that being said, if I were doing my own content, I have to be in a creative space to do that. Planning out this episode, I have to be in a creative space to do that. For me to be creative, I need white space, white noise. And my ideal scenario would be to go like hide away in an Airbnb by myself. But financially, personally, we got some big goals planned for the year. So I'm hyper focused on doing my part to make that happen. So I don't have it in the budget to go pay for an Airbnb by myself. So where can I create more white space? Maybe it's just simply going to a different coffee shop, or maybe it's having a day where I don't have any meetings. I let those DMs pile up. I turn the notifications off. I don't know how you people do it with the watches. Ding, 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 ding. Like, it stresses me out to even think about that, but maybe it's quieting all of the noise so you can just be and think. If you're putting off something that requires you to be creative, whether that is like a design or content creation or reworking your offers or creating your next launch, if it involves any level of creativity and you keep putting it off, odds are you have not set up the time and place for you to just be. And that's probably the best thing that you can do. Then number 3, if you're putting stuff off, maybe it doesn't feel urgent. So maybe how can we find a way to trick ourselves into putting some level of urgency into this thing? Here's where this is real fun to think about if I'm going to own my stuff, because that's what we're about here. My onboarding process has been a continual saga that's been going on since the dawn of time. And it's because there's some manual steps that happen. It's because I have problems relinquishing control. It's because I believe so hard that I want to help my people that it actually got in the way of process and has created some steps that may not be necessary, are hard to work around and find the right platform to support. But I've never focused on finding a solution because it's never been a problem until now. It's a real problem because I'm at capacity, and if something goes wrong in my onboarding, it's taking mental energy, time, me having to check in with my assistant and just tackle all of this stuff that had I created urgency before necessity, it would have fixed it. And that's on me. That sucks, but that's the truth. So are there things you're putting off right now that in time will be very important, but right now just don't feel like a big deal, so we're just ignoring it? If you're in that camp, how can you create some level of urgency, whether it's a due date or a reward system, whether it's having someone hold you accountable? Maybe it's me, maybe it's Inside Get Shit Done Club, whatever that looks like. Where can we create that level of urgency to encourage you to take action on the thing that you need to do? So those are my 3 little subcategories inside the problem of procrastination, because I think that is a huge one when it comes to productivity. But number 3 in just overall productivity hacks is this: own your shit. Be radically honest with yourself. And if you're working with a coach or someone who's holding you accountable, being radically honest with them. I think that is so important. There's something about just owning the realities. That's something I've been saying a lot lately. And that's me right now. I'm just owning the reality of some of my choices, my commitments that I have put on my plate. I have to own the reality of where I'm at. I also have to own the reality of what it takes to get through this season and to get to the next season that I already am dreaming and thinking about. I have to own that. And if I own that, then I can make different choices moving forward, or then I can just be really focused on the limited time that I do have to focus on the things that I have to get done. So owning my stuff. I'm going to read what I wrote when I wrote this a couple weeks ago. I told you I planned out the whole year of topics. I plan out my podcast episodes ahead of time, and then I record in a different headspace. For me, that just works best. It's a different energy to be in speaking Kelsey mode than like in pajama pants writing out content mode. Those are different Kelseys. And so I'm going to read to you what I wrote in real time when I wrote this. Own your shit. I literally slept in today, which means my day unfolded such that it's 5:40 p.m., which is way past my work time. If you guys didn't know, I have a hard stop at 3 typically to go to the gym, and I'm still working. But this shit needed to get done. So yes, in this moment, I am owning it. There's so much peace in just saying, you know what? It is what it is today, and that's okay. Now, what's not okay is if this becomes a reoccurring theme, but that's a conversation for another day. And so true, like owning the realities, but then if the realities become a pattern or become your normal, that's worth a reassessment. So all that to say, I'm in a season where productivity matters, and it looks a little bit different. And in the beginning, I said I was wrong, and here's where I was wrong. I used to have an insane morning routine. I would write, I would journal, I would meditate, I would read, I would drink the juices and do all of the things. And I felt good. Like my body felt good. I shared how important it was because at that time it felt very important. And this is not to say your health doesn't matter, because it does. And I definitely would like to get into more of a rhythm of honoring my health better. But I will say this, simplifying my routine and being honest about what action steps lead to get me to my goals, I have since hit and set new goals in adjusting my process. So productivity to today, Kelsey, who's in hustle mode, who is rapidly growing and scaling the business, looks different. And that's just the truth. What it takes to be where I'm at today, which is on scale to double my revenue from a year ago, what it truly takes in the reality of all the things I shared with you at the top of the episode is very focused work. And if I'm not able to set myself up to have focused chunks of work time, I need to change, or I need to decrease the expectation I have put on myself to execute on these things to get to where I want to go. So my hope today is this. I hope you're honest about where you're at, the season that you are in right now, and where you want to go and why. And for multiple reasons, I think it's important to know where you want to go and why. But if you're honest and you're in a season that just feels off, give yourself some permission to change your process and maybe prioritize productivity in a way that aligns with the realities of your schedule and your life today, and be okay with that. So I talked about batch responding. I think that can be game changing for a lot of us. It is unrealistic for people to assume that we're going to drop everything on a dime and respond to them quickly. And are we giving our best selves if we're texting in front of our friends and, oh, hold on a second, and we're typing on the watch and sending voice messages while we drive? Are we really giving our best self? So I encourage you to marinate on that. Diagnosing the root cause. If you're in a season of wanting to tackle more things and be productive, if you're putting stuff off, why is that? And getting real clear and honest with yourself about that. And then the last step of this is to own your stuff, own the reality of where you're at and the reality of where you want to go. And if there's a disconnect there, what's your plan to get out of that? So I'm going to shoot my shot here. This is something that has been on my heart. This is something that I have not been proactive at, but I'm going to throw it out there because this doesn't need a whole system or process to execute on. This just is me asking. So I'm asking a favor from you. If you're listening to this episode, maybe you've listened to other ones before, but if you like what I have to say and you think I could serve your audience, if you have a podcast, an event, a community where you are looking for a speaker or facilitator, I would be honored and I would love to have the opportunity to serve your audience in that way. Or if you have a friend who has an event or some sort of workshop I could lead, or they have a podcast you think I would be a good fit for, I'd love to be on. And my Instagram is Kelsey Marie Knudsen on Instagram. You can send me a direct message on there. I handle my own Instagram messages, so I would love to have a conversation if that's something you think would be beneficial to your audience. But that's what I have for you today. Now, I go encourage you to be radically honest with yourself now that I've shared all of my things, and I encourage you to find a way to set yourself up for success. That way you're tackling not just any shit, but the right shit in your business. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week.